help me out and just introduce yourselves so you know who each other are and where you're from. And in your introduction, if you could also just share with me one takeaway that you either learned or found interesting from the hangout that we did last week or from the information that you were reading this week. Just one recent takeaway that has gotten you closer to becoming a fabulous dynamic trainer. What's one thing that stood out to you? So name, where you're from, and then the takeaway. Let's start with Chris from Boston. Okay, we can hear now.
Yes, I can hear you. I'm from Boston. I think with the material in the covering today with the elm tree. The elm tree and really utilizing that. I've been coaching my own son's Little League team right now, and so I've been trying to incorporate those three principles, the effort, the learning, and the mistakes are okay. And I found that very beneficial.
Okay, great. Today we're actually going to be talking about E-Tank, but that's good too. Save that for next week. We're going to be doing elm tree next week. All right, Emily, how about you?
So I'm Emily Archibald. We're going through like everything, right? So like I am.
Name where you're from and takeaway from either the hangout last week or the material.
Great. So I'm Emily. I am from Caldwell, New Jersey, but currently living in Montclair, which is just like 2 towns over. I am actually, so I'm a lacrosse coach as well as working for PCA, and I'm starting with my new team today. So I've been developing practice plans and like establishing expectations that I want to go through. And I know that we're doing elm tree next week, but that is definitely something that has been sticking out in my mind, especially with the age that I'm working with in terms of like mistakes, and that mistakes are okay, and how can we move on by like fleshing them. So like, how am I going to introduce that? But that's been on my mind.
Great. We have to get you and Teresa together.
Yeah.
All right, Hannah.
Hey guys, I'm Hannah. I'm originally from Boston, although now I'm in New York. I'm a partner support manager here with the Positive Coaching Alliance. I'd say one thing that I took away is just I really enjoyed hearing about how Kelly was kind of telling us about how she implements like activities and gets people up and active in the beginning. And I think that it's just really useful, and it makes people, I just thought that it really makes people connect and makes people like want to be at the workshop and realize that it's a kind of useful tool rather than just kind of like sitting and listening to someone for 2 hours. So I definitely liked hearing about the ways in which Kelly implements her, physical activities, and yeah.
Okay, thanks. Ivan, go ahead.
My name's Ivan. I was originally from London, England. I now live in Denver, Colorado. I work with the local youth soccer club here. One of the things I enjoyed last week in the hangout was one, which is just what Hannah said. Kelly, you're very vibrant. I think that's great when you see someone such as yourself and how you interact with your staff, with your workshops. I try to do that when I'm working with my coaches, and so it's good to get extra tips and helps us how to do that. But also I like the way that you were telling us last week how to be prepared to when you go to your first workshop. I think you made a reference to someone in Minnesota had a 2-hour drive and it ended up being a 4-hour drive, and but he still got there in time, and he came in and said, don't worry about my drive, we're here to do the workshop. Mm-hmm. I see a lot of coaches who walk off the field, don't always do that. They bring their crappy day onto the crappy practice soccer field. So
mm-hmm. Yeah, I was very impressed by that as well. All right, thank you. Teresa.
Hi, I'm Teresa. I'm from Philadelphia, also a lacrosse coach, so woo, Emily. One of the many hats I wear here in Philadelphia. But a big takeaway that I took away from last week and with the material this week is how to bring your personality to workshops and how important that is. Because just with watching the different YouTube videos that you posted, Kelly, your approach was a lot different than the other 3. So it was just cool to see that the material, how it was presented in different ways, and you don't need to do exactly what somebody else does. So I really enjoyed reading the responses so far posted this week, and just seeing how everyone incorporates teaching these different lessons and what's important.
Thanks. Adina said that last night too. Adina Petersmeyer on the Hangout. She said, I'm just so glad that you put those other links on there, because she said she was watching some of the things that I did and she was like, I don't know if I can do that. But then she said when she saw some of the other trainers and the way they did it, she was like, oh, well, I could do a little bit of that and I could do a little bit of that. And, you know, I have loads and loads and loads of links. So hopefully every week I'll be able to send you another little chunk from different trainers. Unfortunately, a lot of the videos are from the previous version of our workshop, because this workshop was just rolled out this summer. But you get the idea, and you get the idea of style and activities and just how they explain things. But I think it's also good to connect with other trainers in other parts of the country and see how, you know, different ones do things. And so thanks. I'm glad that was valuable for you. Okay, Kiko. Can you hear me? Kiko, are you there?
Oh, hi. My phone keeps cutting in and out.
No problem.
Yeah, so I'm from Portland, Oregon, and I also really, kind of like Teresa just said, I really like seeing the different presentations. And, you know, one guy brought a book and someone else was, you know, just bringing in stories, so I don't have to try and copy what the workshop looks like when you do it, or when, you know, someone else does it. I can kind of be creative.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And I think Carrie joined us. All right, she's on mute. Well, if you jump in, Carrie, we would love to hear from you. And if not, we're just going to get rolling. All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the first principle. And last week we went through the introduction, and I talked just a lot. Obviously, you know, you got a good idea of sort of the culture that we want to set in our workshops. And it is a culture of interaction and challenging the audience and keeping them engaged, bouncing off the walls, but just keeping it interesting. I had the opportunity yesterday to deliver a workshop that was a little bit unique. I was one of the facilitators at the Teams. It's called the Teams Conference. It was in Atlantic City, and it was for sports management professionals. So it was one of the first times that I actually got to deliver a workshop to people that weren't coaches. It was sort of a PR workshop. They wanted to see a sampling of all the 4 workshops that we did. So I had an hour to give them a little taste of the leadership workshop and coach workshop and parent workshop and athlete workshop. And I found it really challenging because I couldn't draw on a lot of their experience as coaches, and none of them knew each other, and they weren't necessarily there for the purpose of becoming better coaches or becoming better parents or becoming better athletes. So it was neat for me because I got to really draw upon, you know, the reason why we do what we do rather than helping the people themselves. And interaction was so important because this was a 4-day conference, and any of you that ever went to any of these big sports conferences, you're going from room to room, but you're sitting for, you know, an hour at a time, 2 hours at a time. So these guys, it was already day 2 into it, and I was the first one of the day, and they were like, you know, they sat down right away, just looking like this. And I just said to them, all right, I'm going to give you a sampling of our workshop. First, you're going to put on your coach hat. Here we go. And they were coaches. And then I said, okay, take off your coach hat. Now you're parents. And I really, it was almost like it was a lot of acting, and it's a lot of entertaining you have to do. And I had to put on a different persona. So not that I need you all to be Hollywood Grammy-winning actors and actresses, but there is definitely an element of drama to put in there when you're talking to different audiences to get them to connect with what you're talking about. And at the one point, you know, they were getting a little, you know, about a half hour into it. You could tell some of the people were just like taking notes, and other people were super interested. And this one guy was in the front row. He just kept taking notes, and I didn't even know what he was taking notes on. And I was giving an example of like a parent yelling at their child. And I said, now, if you're at work, do you really think that you would perform at your best if your boss was hanging over you and saying, come on, let's go. And he jumped 5 feet in the air, and he was like, oh my gosh, and it like woke him up for the rest of the workshop. And sometimes, like, that's all you need to do. You just need to change your voice a little bit. Instead of being, you know, one person, I just, you know, threw that at him, and he was with me for the rest of the workshop. I think he was afraid to get scared out of his mind. But, you know, it's not a tactic that takes a lot of thought. It's just I wanted to bring up the energy level. So I thought that was fun. All right, so today we are going to assume we've already been through the introduction to the workshop, and we're going to jump right into the first principle, which is coming. Here it is. Okay, the first principle, which is filling the emotional tank. What I wanted to preface this with is there's a reason that we switched the order of the principles. Some of you might realize when you look at the book that the principle in the workshop and the principle in this is not the same. Does anybody know a background about why we decided to put filling the emotional tank first when we did this final revision of this workshop? Anybody want to take a guess? Any PCA people in there know why? What are your thoughts? Why would we switch after about 16 years of having Elm Tree of Mastery be the first principle? Why all of a sudden would we switch to making filling the emotional tank the first principle?
Because you think it's the most important.
Yeah, why do you think that?
Because we are trying to ensure that the athletes that we are dealing with are learning and improving, and filling their emotional tank is probably one of the best ways to do that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That actually is the best way to do it. And that's what the research has pointed to. So we were really priding ourselves on the Elm Tree of Mastery. And Carol Dweck is one of our huge proponents of PCA and a lot of contributions. However, coaching kids to perform at a mastery focus is fantastic if they're able to receive. But if the child's tank is not filled, they're not able to receive the awesome coaching that you're providing for them. So the other thing that Jim Thompson was talking about was at times our workshops can be a serious information overload. Point where your brain is full. And if you're going to walk out of that workshop as a coach that just went through 90 minutes to 2 hours of fantastic information, and you walked out and you got in your car and you called your spouse and said, I'm on my way home, and they said, what did you learn? What was this workshop about? And you could pick one thing. If you just wanted them to get one thing out of the workshop that you just spent all this time doing, what's the one thing you would like them to get out of it? What's the one way they could change?
5-to-1 ratio.
5-to-1 ratio, be more positive. Exactly. So when, and Jim Thompson sort of polled the whole staff and the trainers with that question, what's the one thing that we want coaches to improve on? And bottom line, I don't care if you're coaching 4-year-olds or you're coaching 40-year-olds, whoever it is, we want them to be more positive because positivity works better than negativity. And obviously we're called Positive Coaching Alliance for a reason. It's not the Negative Coaching Alliance. So we know that positivity works from the best coaches that have told us it works, but also the research behind it. So that's why our focus has really been on positivity and filling the emotional tank. It's very clear and easy to explain to coaches that positivity can fill tanks and negativity drains tanks. So that's the reason for the umbrella. When you are doing a workshop, probably within the next year, because the new edition of this book has not come out yet with the principles changed, it is something to mention that we're going to actually go to the second principle in order in the book. So when you tell them to turn to a page, make sure they know that we will be coming back to Elm Tree of Mastery. But right now we're going to focus on filling the emotional tanks. Just a little side note of logistics in there. All right, so is everybody all right if I just jump right in? Do you guys have any questions before I start?
That's good.
All right, super. So you are all going to be coaches for right now. You've just gone through the first part of the workshop. Who remembers what I said from last week about how long should the introduction to the workshop take? How far into the workshop should you be right now?
15 to 20 minutes.
About 15 to 20 minutes. Yeah, is that Carrie?
Yes, it is. Oh, you can hear me. Good.
I can hear you now. Yes. Do you want to just say hi? We can't see you, but we can hear you. Do you want to just say hi, introduce yourself to everybody first real quick?
Absolutely. Carrie Zaranandia from San Rafael, California, north of the Golden Gate Bridge. And I've been teaching and playing tennis for all of my life. So coaching and tennis is my life work, and I love what you guys do. And I'm so happy to be a part of this.
All right. Thanks, Carrie. And coming from a tennis mom, I'm really enjoying tennis as well, I must say.
Very cool.
How do you pronounce your last name again?
Zaranandia.
I love it. All right, cool. I saw there was lots of syllables in what you said. I'm just going to Carrie Z, sounds good to me. All right, so coaches, let's jump right in. Our first principle is called filling the emotional tank. And I think this is so well illustrated by a quote by one of my favorite Americans. If I could have a volunteer, you don't have to raise your hand, just somebody that feels moved to read this quote for me, for Maya Angelou. Could you please read that for me? Can anybody see it? There we go.
I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
This is such a beautiful quote, and I try to help teach this to my children every day. And as coaches, I think we spend a lot of time trying to say the right things and do the right things. Where, in all honesty, if you think back to a really fantastic team experience you had as a youth, Doesn't necessarily have to be on a sports team, but a time that you were really connected to a group of people for a common goal. And it was just a fantastic experience. I want you to just think back to what it was like to be on that team. Think about the environment. Think about the people that were involved. Think about the coach or the mentor that was on that team. And what I would like you to do, just for 30 seconds, I'm going to ask you, shoulder to shoulder, somebody that's on either up by your right shoulder or your left shoulder. I just want you to tell them, describe for them in just 1 or 2 sentences what it was like to be on that team. Okay, go ahead. So everybody would turn to a partner just for 30 seconds. Think of a team and describe it to a partner, what it was like to be on that team. So you guys obviously can't talk to each other, but can I just have one of you just share for me an example of a team that you were on as a youth that was a great experience for you, and why?
I could do it as a coach. I could do it as a coach more than I could do it as a player.
Okay, I want you to think of it as a player, though.
I can think of one time, Kelly.
Okay.
And it was literally like this team that I'd been with since 3rd grade, and we had actually grown up together, and we all came back our senior year of high school. We all kind of went to different high schools, and we came back and we reunited with the coach and everyone, and we'd all kind of stayed friends. And that was just a really fun experience because we kind of like got to reminisce about the good times while we were all obviously improving as players from playing in high school. And so it was just a lot of fun. And that's kind of what I remember, just like feeling like I was leaving the sport because I wasn't going to play in college, just leaving the sport like on a high note with like the people I started playing with in the beginning.
That's awesome. That's great. Can I have one more example? One more story. All right, Ivan, I'll let you share your coach story. Go ahead.
I had the luxury when I was working with, I still have twin boys, but I had when they were 10 or 11 years of age, 9 or 10, we had a very special group of not only players, but parents, and they were successful on the field, but far and away the success was off the field in the terms of how we connected as a group. And my boys still, I mean, they're 22, 23 years of age now, and they still look back to that time and say, yeah, we had a great little soccer team, but the actual friendships that they made with both the kids and the parents, they still exist today. And I think that's very important.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So I would probably have 2 or 3 other people share. And let's think about this. What were some of the common words that you heard when we heard examples from a few people? What were some words that popped out? I know a lot of you guys are on mute and you only heard 2, but think about some common words. What do you think I hear at workshops?
The friendships that were bonded.
Yes, friendships, bonding, connection. What else?
Fun, the enjoyment.
Fun. Yeah, fun, enjoyment. So let's think about that. You know, some of you have been out of sports for 30, 40 years, and you remember back to a time when it was about connection, fun, friendships, enjoyment. Somehow, somewhere along the way, that gets lost in sports. And we're trying to bring it back. Because any of you that are coaching at the upper level right now, maybe high school or college level, imagine if your players walked off your field every day and said, that was so much fun. I love my teammates. My coach loves me and cares about me. And I just had a blast. That's our goal at Positive Coaching because we know they play at their best. So how do we gauge this? What we do is we use something called the emotional tank. And we use the analogy of the gas tank. Now, a lot of you know when you're driving in your car and you've got a full tank of gas, you're set and ready to go. I will go as far as I need to go. I, last night, or 2 nights ago, was driving to Atlantic City at 10 o'clock at night. Not the greatest place to try to drive at night, especially when you don't know where you're going, and it was actually dark and rainy, and my light went on. And this is a true story. My gas light went on in my car, and I'm driving down the Atlantic City Expressway at 10 o'clock at night, heading towards Atlantic City. What happens to your mood when your gas light goes on and you're not sure where you can stop for gas? What are some of the thoughts going through your head?
Breakdown, panic.
Right. I'm totally distracted. I'm not even thinking about driving. I'm like, oh my gosh, can I make it? Am I going to make it? Am I going to make it? There is a gas light that goes on in your players' tanks. There are times on the field or on the court or in the pool when the gas light goes on. The players are distracted. They're not thinking about what's in the moment. They're not focused because they're starting to panic. So as coaches, we have to start to realize what an athlete with an empty tank is going to be like. What are the characteristics of an athlete with a full tank so that we can identify this and try to improve it. So if I were to ask you right now, I'm going to ask this side of the room. So you guys can just pretend you're on that side of the room. I'm going to ask this side of the room to stand up. And I would like you to show me, just with your body language, what would an athlete coming to practice or a game look like that has a full emotional tank? Okay, so maybe like Kiko, Teresa, and Ivan, show me what you would look like coming to practice with a full emotional tank just by using body language.
Yeah, here we go. Let's get ready.
All right, sit up straight. They're smiling. They're ready to go. All right, so Kiko, Emily, Chris, and Carrie on this side of the room, I want you to show me what an athlete would look like, just using body language, coming to the field or practice with an empty emotional tank. Yeah. All of a sudden, they're down. Their heads are down. Their eyes are down. They're not looking at me. They're not concentrating. Ask you this. Who would perform better at practice or the game that day? This side of the room, full, or this side of the room, empty? Everybody?
Full.
Full. By far, full. And this doesn't take 20 years of research to teach us that. We know that if somebody has an empty tank, they're not going to be ready for the next play. They're not going to be excited. They're going to give up quickly. They're going to be critical. What about older players? I know some little players that come to my team with an empty tank. I mean, they're literally crying and whiny and they don't want to be there. But what about an older player? What sort of behavioral characteristics do you see in maybe high school players or middle school players that have an empty emotional tank? Maybe they got yelled at by their parents. Maybe they didn't do well in school that day. Going on with friends. What kind of behaviors do they exhibit that could clue you in as a coach that they have an empty emotional tank?
Disruptive.
Disruptive, yes, absolutely.
I think also just kind of taking themselves out of the play and being more withdrawn and not participating.
Absolutely, withdrawn, not participating, disruptive. Great answers.
It's contagious.
It is contagious. Unfortunately, it's very contagious. And one person can bring the rest of the team down. So we as coaches have to be aware of that. The most important thing that I'm interested in as a coach is the last one. Athletes with emotional tanks are not coachable. Who has all this great, fantastic, wonderful knowledge to impart on these kids. I want them to be coachable. I want them to be able to receive it. And on the opposite side, athletes with a full tank, we know what they're going to be like. They're going to be ready to go. They're fired up. They're going to work hard. They're going to work as a team, because when you have an empty tank, you're focusing on yourself. You're the victim. You're the one that's getting all these bad things to happen. When you have a full tank, you're going to be looking for how others can be better, and you're going to be coachable and ready to go. So that seems like a pretty easy task, coaches. All we have to do to get the best performance is to fill our athletes' emotional tanks, right? Piece of cake, no problem. We could probably leave the workshop right now with that much information. Here's what we need to know. How do we do it? The best way to figure out how we do it is to figure out how we drain it and how we fill it. So here's my first question. Can I have 2 volunteers from the audience? Now, I'm just going to assume that this is a baseball workshop, okay? So can I get someone whose birthday is closest to today? Who thinks they have a birthday very close to today? All right, Emily, when's your birthday?
October 6th.
All right, awesome. Emily, would you like to be the batter or the pitcher?
Batter.
All right, Emily's going to be the batter. Could you choose someone in the audience to be your pitcher?
Chris.
All right, Chris is going to be the pitcher. So Chris and Emily, come on up. All right, so Chris, you're going to be given the ball, and I always use a soft, squishy ball. And Emily's, you go. Awesome, I love it. Emily's going to be the batter, so I set them up in front of the room so that everyone can see. And we're going to stick with the same teams we had before. So this team, remember this side of the room, because my room's divided into 2. This side of the room, remember, you guys are the tank fillers. You guys are fired up, full tanks, ready to go, and you also fill tanks. This side of the room, you're going to be my tank drainers. You had a rough day today. You're not feeling great. You're going to be the drainers. But for right now, Chris is going to pitch. Emily is going to swing. Emily, you are going to knock this ball out of the park. You're going to have the best swing and the best hit you ever did. And I'm going to ask my tank fillers to fill your tank, okay? You can stand up and do whatever you need to do. All right, Chris, wind up for the pitch. All right, Emily has an air bat. Air bats are wonderful because they do whatever I tell them to do. So the air bat's going to swing. Ball's going to go flying. All right, that side of the room, fill her tank.
Nice hit.
Oh, well
nice job. The crowd goes wild. All right, Emily's feeling pretty awesome. This time, Chris, you're going to pitch it again. Emily, you're going to miss. It's actually the 3rd strike, sorry to say. But you're going to miss, and you're going to be out. This side of the room over here, you're going to drain her tank. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, pitch. Swing and a miss. That side of the room.
Oh, how could you do that?
Man.
Nice
Do it
going.
again.
Okay. This happens every single day. in youth sports. Something great happens, we all cheer. Something terrible happens, we all drain tanks. It's just part of nature. Here's what I'm gonna ask you to do now. Chris, last pitch. You're gonna pitch to Emily. She's gonna swing, she's gonna miss. I want both sides of the room to fill her tank, even though she struck out. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, pitch. Emily swings, strike out, fill it.
Ah, way to go.
God, that was really good.
All right. Which one had the most energy from the crowd? Which one of those 3 scenarios had the most energy from the crowd?
The most energy?
Yeah. Which one was the loudest?
Scenario 1.
Right. When you were filling because she was successful. Some people say we were draining her tank. That was the most loud. And in a room, this always happens. It's always louder when they're filling. It's always louder when they're booing, because that's always fun. The third time when I say, I want you to fill her tank, when she struck out, there's always a little pause. And everybody goes, oh, good job, Emily. Good try. You'll get them next time. It's not natural for us. We actually don't really know how to do that because that's not ingrained in our culture. This is something we actually have to train ourselves to do. Emily, when you were batting up there and you missed, people were draining your tank. What did you hear or see? Can you tell me what you heard or saw from the crowd that was draining your tank?
Yeah, I think the one thing that stood out was the comment, way to go. Super sarcastic.
Absolutely. Way to go. Good job. My grandmother swings better than that. Yeah, absolutely. Great. What did you see?
Who did I see?
No, what did you see?
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, people's faces popped up. I don't know. I think that it was also uncomfortable for people part of this session because we are people that are obviously taking this course for a reason, because we believe in the positive.
Yeah.
But I do have to say is that when, I struck out, but they had to be positive, I was like, oh, I could do this again. Now I want to get back up and do better.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see if you saw any of these things. When I asked you to drain the tank, criticism, you felt criticism, maybe correction, that's a tank drainer. If you're criticizing and correcting somebody without them having a full tank, that's actually a good way to drain a tank. Sarcasm, Emily mentioned sarcasm. Ignoring, some people didn't say a word. I've had a lot of parents and fans and coaches say, well, I'm not a negative coach. I just don't say anything. Ignoring a player is more of a tank drainer than if you said something at all. And the last one is nonverbals. This is really crucial to me. Albert Moravian is a professor at UCLA, and he's spent his life's work studying verbal and nonverbal cues. Interestingly, it makes sense because nonverbal was the first language that we used to communicate. But what he found in his research was 83% of nonverbals are remembered. Our brain can actually process 83% of nonverbals. Our brain only processes 7% of what's actually said. Now, to me, I was like, boy, I do a lot of talking. Maybe I should really work more on my nonverbal, my expression. The other thing that he found was that nonverbal communication sticks with a person almost 5 times longer. So if you right now, if I asked all of you to close your eyes, and I want you to picture a coach or a parent or a teacher that was extremely disappointed in you and what they looked like. How many of you can raise your hand and see a clear picture of a face or a body of somebody that was disappointed in you? Right. How many of you would say that was over 10 years ago? Over 20 years ago? Some of you over 30 years ago. That's how long that can stay with you. Most of us don't remember exactly what was said to us, but we remember the nonverbals. Coaches, I want you to remember that. Especially when you're trying to do a good thing, put on a happy face, put on the stance of positivity, and complain in your brain if you need to, because we're all human. Sometimes we see in professional football, we see the coaches like this, and we think because, they don't want to show the TV what play they're saying. I think it's because they're actually complaining about all their players, and they don't want to be known as a person that's doing that. So whatever you need to do to complain in your brain, coaches, we hear you, but don't let the players see you do it. Let's talk about filling the tank. Emily, when you missed, you struck out, and they said to you, I said to them to fill your tank. What did you hear a lot of then?
Great job, good effort. Just like, woo.
Woo! Good effort. All right, I'm going to give you guys a bit of advice right now. I want you to take 2 words out of your vocabulary completely, and that is the words good job. Good job has actually no meaningful information. If you want to say good job, make sure you tack it onto something that Emily can use as useful. Emily, you just struck out. So obviously in Emily's mind, she's done something wrong. And if I say to you, Emily, good job, what is that reinforcing?
The strikeout.
Right, the strikeout was a good job, okay? What if I use something truthful and specific? You all saw Emily swing. You all saw Emily miss. You all saw Emily strike out. Even if you don't know baseball, okay? What are 3 things that Emily could have done well that I can give her specific praise for, even if the outcome was that she struck out?
Speed of bat coming through.
Yeah, excellent. Great speed on your swing. What else?
Great job swinging at a strike. Great job swinging at a strike.
Good. You swung through a strike. You didn't hesitate. Awesome. And what's another one?
Keep the eye on the ball.
Right.
Strikeout looking.
Shoulders were squared, whatever it was, think of things specific and truthful. Now, if Emily was told, good speed on your swing, way to swing, even though it was a strike, and, way to keep your shoulders square, is that useful information that can help you improve for the next time, Emily?
Yeah.
Yeah, much better than good job. So what we're applauding is her effort. We're not applauding her strike. So be truthful and specific. Appreciating, if you say to a player like Emily, I really appreciate the way you swung. Even though it was a strike, you weren't afraid to swing. Emily's going to feel like, all right, I did something good here. That's a good thing. Listening. As coaches, we are too quick to talk, especially when we sub a player out of the game. The player comes out, they're standing next to us. We as coaches, sometimes I remember being a young coach. And when I was coaching high school, I remember subbing out a player and literally as they're running over to me going, oh crap, I don't even know what to say to them. You're panicking. I've got to have these words of wisdom to tell this player when they come out of the game and I don't even know what to say. Think about listening. Wow, what's going on in there? How'd you feel about being in that play? Let the player feel empowered to be able to help you. You're the coach. You're on the sideline. You're not in the thick of the game. You're not seeing what's going on. Have them tell you. And that can give you a great idea of their tank level and what you need to do as a coach to fill it. And then again, nonverbals. Be as powerful as you can with that positive stance in nonverbals because that's what the kids will remember. All right, so let's talk about this. I told you I'm going to send you home with a ton of tools. All right, the best tools are the ones you can use right away. Here's a very simple question. What's one thing coaches can do to be effective? If you get nothing else out of this workshop today, here it is. We want you to be more positive than critical. It's that simple. We want you to be more positive. But there's a ratio of positives to criticisms. If we have our ratio being, we want you to give 100 positives for every critical comment, you're not going to be taken seriously. That's just way too much. It's overkill. But if we say, we want you to do 1 positive for every criticism, then again, it's not going to be as effective. There's this ratio that is the perfect balance of positives to critiques that you would have in a relationship with a player. And it's actually called the magic ratio because in different forms of research over 20 years, in marriages, in educational situations with teachers and students, and in sports, all 3 of these different research studies came up with this exact same ratio, calling it the magic ratio because the players' performance improved dramatically as soon as we got close to that ratio. So 1-to-1's great. 2-to-1 is great. But it's a little bit higher than that. All right, so what I'm going to ask you to do on the count of 3, I want you to guess, using your fingers, I'm going to give you a hint, it's less than 10. Using your fingers, I want you to vote for what do you think the ratio is of positives to criticisms. You've got choices now, anywhere between 3 and 10. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Go ahead. Boy, you guys are good. 5 is correct. 90% of the time, most people say 3, believe it or not. 1, if you open up your books to page 32, it's a little bit deeper of an explanation. You can read a little bit more about the studies that I was referring to. And it talks about even Phil Jackson using this in his practices with the NBA. A lot of times I tell people what I do and I tell people about this positive to critique ratio and they say, well, that's great if you're coaching 6-year-olds, but I'm coaching travel. I'm coaching a tough, really elite team of kids. And I said, well, how about Phil Jackson? Would you consider him an elite coach? And they would say, yeah. I'd say, well, let's hear what he has to say. So if we're going to talk about one thing our coaches can do, we want you to up this ratio. Was exposed to positive coaching by Jim Thompson. He didn't invent it. He was exposed to it, and he realized that there was a lot of things he was doing. That's why Jim Thompson approached him, because he said, Phil Jackson is winning, and he's considered a more positive coach. But this idea of the 5-to-1 ratio was new to Phil Jackson. So Phil says, about that time, Jim's book shows up, and positive coaching becomes an influence in my life. The 5-to-1 ratio, 5 praises to 1 critique, and of course, We know that these Bulls won 3 championships in a row. There are a few different examples in this book. Page 33 at the top talks a little bit about Phil Jackson's experience in using this magic ratio with one of the toughest players he ever had, Horace Grant. And what he realized was it even works in the NBA. So I'm going to let you read that in a little bit. Let's hear from Phil first.
Extremely important to couch comments in a positive value, because we will, the interesting thing is we will give, you're working really hard, you're making plays that are really good, but something's not happening right out there. And, whatever it is that's not happening right is always a thing that sticks in their mind. So you can announce the 2 positive things or 3 positive things or 4 positive things before you announce the 1 negative thing, but somehow the negative thing is like an atomic bomb. So we really try and get them to focus on the fact that this is not about the negativity part of your game. This is about how you grow as a player.
And I just love that. I love that Phil's able to frame this into, it's not about being good or bad. It's not about failing and making mistakes. It's about how you grow as a player. So let's talk about your players and your teams, your kids that you coach. Here's the issue that we have sometimes. You know that athletes thrive on positive feedback. You understand this so far, but your team's been struggling and they need a lot of correction. As a double goal coach, how can you give them the feedback they need to improve without discouraging them? So any of us that are coaching youth teams, there's a lot of skills involved, and there's a lot of new skills involved. And I started coaching youth lacrosse after a career in coaching upper level high school lacrosse. But when I first started down coaching like 6 and 7 year olds in the sport of lacrosse, catching a ball was a miracle. If I could have these kids that could actually catch a ball. So to me, I was jumping up and down excited when they caught the ball. I can't tell you how many girls would miss over and over and over again and say, oh, I stink. I'm just bad at this. I'm just terrible. So how can I stay positive as a coach, giving the players feedback they deserve, they need, without being discouraging? Excuse me. So what I'm going to ask you to do right now is break up by age groups that you coach. So in the back of the room, we have a lot of space. I'm going to put those of you that coach U8 around, if it's a little bit off, it's okay. But averaging under the grade, under age 8. U10 is going to be back there. U12 is going to be over here. And then 12 to 15 is going to be over in this corner. And if anybody's in the room that coaches 15 and above, you're going to be over here. And I'm going to ask you, just when you get to that group, I just want you to take about 2 minutes just to kind of share with the group any ideas that you have on how to coach skills, developing players in a way that can remain positive, okay? So you can practice some of the things we talked about. Go ahead to your group. Boom, 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 boom. You all move to the back of the room. Starts a nice, healthy discussion. I purposely do this by age group because I think different age groups handle it different ways. So I'll have them talk for about 2 minutes, and then I'll bring the group back in. And the nice thing about this is I have them broken up into age groups, and sometimes you don't get somebody in every age group. If I only have 2 people in the U10 group, I'll have them, match up with the U8 group, whatever it needs to be, so they're in a nice big group. And then I would just ask for one spokesperson from each group. So I go around the room and I might say, okay, somebody from U8, how do you handle this? How do you give feedback to kids that are under the age of 8 years old when they need correction, but you want to remain positive and not discourage them? Do any of you here coach U8 that could give us a suggestion on how you handle this? No. Anyone want to make something up? Okay.
Setting small attainable goals.
Thanks, Chris. Go ahead. Say it again.
Setting small attainable goals.
Yes. Small little baby steps, attainable goals along the way, and cheer for them along the way. Absolutely. I love it. All right. And then, I go around the room. I get everyone to share. Just between you and me, I've done over 150 workshops. And what happens a lot is when you hear from the younger coach, the coaches coaching younger kids, it has a lot more to do with fun and energy. And we just cheer each other on and we high five and we get so excited. And I don't worry about if they can kick a field goal, or I'm not worried about the final outcome. I'm just making sure they have fun. As you get to the 12-year-olds and the 15-year-olds and over, when they share, you start hearing a lot of, well, we do keep the kids accountable and we make sure that they're actually learning the skills and we try to give them some positive, but the fun is taken out of it. So it's really interesting to me to point out, wow, imagine this. If we took the activity that the 8 and under coaches said they do by high-fiving every time the players practice swinging or whatever it is, and we brought that attitude to our older kids, would that help the older kids And the coaches are like, yeah, probably would. One of the reasons that 70% of kids are dropping out of sports by the age of 13 is because they're not having fun. So if we bring fun without compromising the accountability and the skill, we're going to get a lot more out of our players. So I still have everybody in their groups. And I did forget to mention that I do ask them to bring their books with them to their groups. So that was something I'll say, okay, bring your book with you. We're going to talk again about some tools here. So we want kids to receive feedback. There are a few tools that we're going to practice. These are, if you want to follow along with me, they're on page 40 and 41. I'm only going to share a few of them. But one of the things we talk about is making the critique kid friendly. And I will point out examples that the different groups have said. Like, remember, the 12 and unders said they squat down to the kids' level to talk to them eye level. That's a great way to give kid-friendly feedback so you're not a big adult talking down to them. A non-teachable moment. When is the worst time to give a player feedback about a mistake he or she just made? Anybody?
Right after they did.
Exactly, right after they just made the mistake. When do you think most coaches give feedback to a player when they've just made a mistake?
Right afterwards.
Right away, as soon as you take them out of a game. Rule of thumb is if you're going to sub a player out for a mistake that he or she made, wait for 2 plays to happen first. For some reason, if you wait for 2 full plays, the player doesn't connect the mistake they made to the play. So even if you feel like that was glaring, that was ridiculous, keep them in for a little while. Then when you take them out, the player won't necessarily think that that's why they were subbed. Criticize in private, praise in public. Very simple. If you have a critique to give to a player, make sure the rest of the team doesn't have to hear it. And criticize doesn't necessarily mean be demeaning and yelling. Criticize just means give them some feedback of things they have to work on. We use the word criticize because people understand what that means, but it doesn't have to be criticizing. It doesn't always have to be a negative thing. Asking permission. Hey, you know what? Go over and get a drink of water, and when you come back, I'd love to give you a tip on how to make your shot a little harder. Would you be willing to hear that? Why not ask the coach? Just because you have a whistle around your neck doesn't mean that your players are going to be willing to hear at that moment everything you have to say. Sometimes just getting a drink, taking a walk down the sidelines helps. If-then statements are huge. Anyone here a parent of a 3-year-old or 4-year-old? All right, some of you are. What is the one word that your 3-year-old or 4-year-old probably says relentlessly all day long?
No.
No, exactly. No, and why? Why? So if-then statements are that answer. Why? Kids want to know, why am I doing this? What's the point? Why do you want me to stay spread out on the wing when all the action's happening in the center of the field? It doesn't make sense to me. But if you explain to a player, if you stay out wide on the wing, then you'll draw your defense out, and then the ball will come to you, and you'll have a lot more room to make the play happen. Just explaining why can help a player go, all right, I got it. I have even explained to players why we do sprints at the end of a practice. I never had that explained to me in my life. My coach would say, get on the end line. We're doing sprints, and I would say, okay, and we'd grunt and we'd groan. But I thought to myself, I want my players to grunt and groan. I want them to know the reason we're doing a couple sprints at the end is because tomorrow in the game, you're going to be tired at the end of the game, and you're going to remember that your legs are stronger because you did those extra sprints at the end of practice yesterday. And I want you to think, as your legs are burning and hurting through those sprints, I'm getting stronger and faster. That's what you're going to remember. It works. Criticism sandwich is great. 2 to 1. 2 positives, sandwich with a critique in the middle. We want 5 to 1. So instead of just giving 2 verbal positives and 1 critique in the middle, add a smile. That's 1. Add the child's name. Thanks, Hannah. Come on over. Put your hand on her shoulder. A name, a smile, and a hand on the shoulder, a little gesture. That's 3 right there. So you've just added 3 to your criticism sandwich, and now you've got a 5 to 1 ratio. So the last thing we're going to do is this. There are toolkit. I'm giving you guys some homework to do. What I want you to do, in your age level group, I'm going to ask you to find 2 partners. So there's going to be 3 of you all together. And I want you to explore these 3 tools. The first one's the buddy system. It's on page 35. The second one is positive charting. It's on page 39. And the third one is the winner's circle on page 41. So you're going to decide in your group of 3 which one of you is going to read about each of those tools. You can find a place in the room or you can stay standing. That's fine. I'm going to ask you to take about 2 minutes to read the paragraph about that tool. And then when you're finished, I want you to come together and just give a sentence and explain how you would use this tool to your little trio of 3. All right, so this activity, just to let you know, this takes some time. This takes about 5 minutes to do this from beginning to end. So just so you have that kind of in your head, Everybody goes, they're all reading in the book. It uses a different intelligence than just having them talk. Some people like the idea to quietly read. They get to share. They get to talk about how they would use it on their team, or if they have used it on their team. One of the things that I don't do is share with the big group again. I think it's redundant. They've already talked about it. They've already shared it. They've already gotten a chance to go through all 3 principles. So I usually don't do a whole big group like, somebody else tell me about buddy systems. Somebody tell me about winner circle. Somebody tell me about positive charting. But one of the things that I do like to do, just because it's personal for me, to wrap that up, I'll have everybody go back to their own seats. And this is the end of the principle, just to let you know. So this is the last thing in filling the emotional tanks. And what I do is I talk about positive charting because it was very crucial to me. It changed the way that I coached. So as I bring everybody back together, I'll say, okay, just one thing I'd like to add. When I first heard about positive charting, this was something I wanted to try right away, because I knew if I kept my players accountable for their effort and accountable for what they were doing, I could measure the improvement. I could track it. I could see if they were improving from one day to the next. My problem was I was the only coach. I didn't have a bench of assistant coaches, and I didn't have the time during a game to keep a beautiful chart and a spreadsheet and check off all the names and all the skills they were doing. So I had to be a little creative. And what I did was I decided to recruit parents to help me with positive charting. So at the beginning of every game, I had a card, and I would have the girls put their name on the card. And sometimes we would do the same skill for everybody. And it was lacrosse. I would say to the girls, okay, I want you to put run hard through ground balls. Run hard through ground ball pickups. That was the skill of the day. Sometimes if I was really in the mood, I would like print them out on my computer, but rarely. I'd always have an index card. Then before the game, I would have the girls run over to their parents or whoever was watching and hand the card to them and say, Mom, Dad, every time you see me run hard through a ground ball, I want you to put a little tally mark. And the parents were like, okay, that's great. And I talked to the parents at the preseason meeting and told them that they were going to help me do this. Now, this is so great because twofold. It got the parents focusing on effort. Number 2, it did the positive charting for me. And then at the end of the game, I would ask the kids to go run over to their parents, grab their card, and come back before our little sit-down meeting. And the kids were able to, and a lot of times the parents would write little notes to their kids like, super job, I love how you did that. Great passing, Emily, way to go. And it was so cool because, and sometimes the parents would separate it by first half and second half, and the kids would be able to see where they did better. And I loved it. And I could keep track of these and hold on to them. There was my positive charting, and I didn't have to do much work at all. So that was something I love to share because it really helped me as a coach. All right, now, yes.
Kelly, can I ask a question there?
Yes, please.
You got, in my case, I've got 16 parents on the sideline watching their kids play.
Yeah.
And are you ever concerned that what the parents might put down may not be positive?
Yes, that's
I
what.
know they're just putting a check mark, but it could still be, I don't think you did anything, Sally.
Yep. That's why I make it very important that I meet with the parents prior to that. I meet with all the parents before the season, and I explain to them what positive charting is and how it's called positive charting because there are no negative comments allowed on the cards at all. And sometimes there's parents that weren't at the meeting or something, and I would, I might grab the parents real quick while the kids are warming up and just explain to them, here's what I need you to do. Or, I'll send an email to the parents and say, meet me at the bench 5 minutes before the game starts or whatever it is. I'm going to talk to you about what this is, the first couple games. And then they catch on. And I talk about how this is just relentless positivity. There are no negative comments allowed on the cards at all. And I've never had a problem. And I've done this from U8 all the way up to about U12. And
And you do this on every game or once in a season?
I do it every game.
Okay.
I do it every. And by the end of the season, I actually have the girls write their own skill. The beginning of the season, I do a skill that we all want to do. Like we keep everybody on the same skill. But at the end of the season, I'll say, what are you going to work on today? What's your focus on? And we talk to the girls a lot throughout the season about effort goals versus outcome goals. I don't want the girls to write on their card, I want to score 4 goals. I want to be the high scorer of the game. That's an outcome. But I might say, I want to follow through on my shot and go in for the rebound. That's a great effort goal. So it's worked out really, really well. Sometimes if the kids don't have a parent there, I'll take their card. I'll say, don't worry about it. I'll take their card. So during the game, I might have 2 or 3 cards that I'm working with. So it's worked out very, very well. So that's it for Emotional Tank. It blends really, really well right into Elm Tree of Mastery, which we're going to talk about next because we're talking about effort. So I love how these 2 principles just mold together. I'm going to stop for right now. And what I would like to hear from you are, like, if you've been to a PCA workshop or you have used this idea of filling emotional tanks, or you have a story to share or some activity that you think you liked that I did or that you think would work really, really well, I'd love to give you a chance to share that. So I'm going to stop talking.
I love the buddy system. It gets the kids outside of themselves, and they're a little bit self-conscious at the beginning. It's a little stilted, and they're a little repetitive. All of a sudden, 2 or 3 times into it, they're able to blossom and really hone in on what their buddy did right. And then you see their little buddy's face, and it's magical. So they have to practice it, and we have to practice speaking nicely to each other. And then all of a sudden, it's a joy for everybody. It's fun.
It is. It's really fun. And again, if you put boundaries on their buddies and you are very careful about who you choose, are they self-chosen buddies or are they buddies that you chose? Are they upperclassmen with younger classmen? I've heard of teams, a lot have done sister teams in high school where it's a sophomore with a junior and a senior, and they're all buddies together. It's a great tool that you can use. And at halftime, all you have to do is say, hey, shout out to your buddy. Everybody give me a shout out. Tell me one thing your buddy did that was great. And they'll come up with things, and it just fills their tanks to know that somebody else is paying attention to them. Thanks, Carrie.
Mm-hmm.
All right, someone else.
Do you see with positive charting, you see it in college football a little bit, but with it's big now in the softball world with the stickers on the helmets. So when it's obviously what you're rewarding is key to that, but if you're rewarding effort goals or whatever you're designating, and kids are earning those, and I've seen some coaches have good success with that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's hard because as trainers, we want to jump into all that stuff. Effort goals is actually the next principle. So it's not wrong to bring that up, but we talk a lot more about effort when we're talking about Elm Tree of Mastery. So I try to focus it on like, what does putting a sticker on somebody's helmet, what does recognizing effort goals do for the child's emotional tank? So I try to sort of keep that focus for this principle on what's doing to the child's emotional maturity so that they're ready to go out and play at their best. And then next principle, we're going to actually talk about how to do it. So that's sort of my transition from one principle to the next. Somebody else. And you know, the example with the baseball bat too, I mean, I've had 4 volunteers stand up and they make a soccer goal. Like you can pretty much use people to make any type of a game or any type of a situation. I pulled a guy up one time and I said, okay, what sport do you play? And he said, wrestling. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna figure out how, and we practiced like a wrestling move, and there were still tank drainers and tank fillers. I had one kid that came up one time and he said, I'm a sailor, I'm on the sailing team, and I'm like, boy, okay, here we go. So your boat is going really fast. I mean, you can make it work with whatever. Sometimes I just do basketball because it's simple and it's easy, and somebody gets to stand there and be a hoop. But you know, I just like to get people up and moving around, and I've had people freeze, like when I do the tank draining. I'm like, okay, drain their tank. And they get up and I'll say, freeze. And everyone's like, ah. And it's so cool to see a whole room full of, this side of the room's not doing it, this side is. And I'll say, oh my gosh, look at them. What do you see? And you see like 20 people like, ah. And they just freeze there. And it's really funny.
I've done a lot with my girls, both actually at the high school level and college level. When things get a little rocky and confidence starts to dwindle, to talk about each other's strengths. And I found it a lot that it's what you see in yourself, other people see differently. So I've had it work very successfully where you get in small groups of 3 or 4 and you have to write down a strength of everybody in the group. And it's so awesome to see that resonate with that one person when you say, you know, hey, so-and-so, you know, you're really good at this and you're really good at motivating us when we're down by 2 and getting us back on track, things like that. And the mentality and the energy coming out of something like that can take, you know, all of 5 minutes to, you know, 20. If you really want to talk about it, it's life-changing. So something as simple as that, and just talking about, you know, your teammates' strengths, I've seen, you know, really fill that emotional tank.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great example. And there's a lot of activities coaches have done too with a paper plate put on the person's back, and then everybody has to go around and write something positive strength that they have on their back, and then they have that to keep. I saw another person that had them do it on a card. and had them pass them around, and everybody had to, like if it said Teresa on it, everybody would have to write something positive about Teresa. And then the coach just went to like Staples or Office Max and got them laminated and made them into little punch card things that they hung on their bag. So they actually had it hanging on their bag every day that had all their strengths that their team said for them. I think sometimes at certain ages, it's hard to get the players themselves to recognize their own strengths. So I think it's an extension of that activity is saying you have to know that you have strengths as well. What are you good at? What is your role? And what do you want to get better at? That's a great thing to do also. Thanks for sharing that. Someone else.
Before the summer tournament season, I had a very interesting experience where it was our first game all playing together as a team. And it was rocky and it wasn't like a great game. We ended up winning, but they definitely could be, they improved throughout the season, but it wasn't one of their best games. And I remember we all met up and I was just acknowledging what we did well. And it was really funny because I like saw a bunch of my girls laughing in the corner and I'm like, what's going on? And they were like, you're just like really nice and it's really surprising. And I was like, and I thought it was really surprising. And it was interesting because throughout the season, it was a lot of like helping change their idea of what an impactful coach can be, that it's not someone that is always negative and yelling at you and correcting you, but that's someone that is also encouraging you and addressing like what you're doing well, and then also acknowledging like, okay, this is something that you can work on, you know, in terms of your switching of hands, etc. But that was a big challenge for me over the summer, was changing that culture.
Yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of kids are brought up to think if you're nice, you're soft. You're not a good coach. And we talk a lot about the difference between demanding and demeaning. There's positive coaches are very demanding and they hold kids accountable. And we expect top-notch behavior and top-notch performance, but we're not going to break you down. And it is a culture shift. Thank you for sharing that. That is, my daughter said the same thing. She was on a team this year that was different than last year. And she said, my coaches are so nice. Like, I don't know how many games you're going to win, Mom, because they're just so nice. And I'm thinking, really? I'm concerned. And then they actually won a couple games, and she was like, wow, it works. It's crazy. All right, well, it's 2 minutes to the hour. So I really appreciate, thank you guys for taking the time to be on here. I'll be on for a few more minutes if any of you guys have anything to share or any questions. Next week, we're going to do Elm Tree of Mastery. And this is one of my favorite weeks because what we get to do next week is you get to show me how to do this principle of Elm Tree of Mastery. So it is highly encouraged, not necessarily mandatory, but highly encouraged. What I do is I send you the recording of this Google Hangout from the last course, and you get to watch it, and then you set up a time for me. So on Monday, I'm going to put up a sign-up sheet on the Google Drive, and you're going to sign up a 10-minute slot, and we're going to have all these little appointments, and you can jump in on anybody's, but you're going to do a little 10-minute demo of Elm Tree of Mastery for me. Get through the entire principle, but it will start with this video. Usually I say, don't watch the video, just start from there. But it'll start with this. Can you get athletes to believe they can get better? So it's your first chance to actually practice facilitating a little mini part of a workshop. The second time you get to practice is at the end of the course. You get to do a practice of the 20-minute demonstration that you're going to do at the end. And then the third time is the final. So if you take advantage of this opportunity, it'll give you a chance to kind of feel what it's like to practice on a video call. And I do encourage 2 people. I usually have 2 or 3 people every hour to sign up so that you can watch other people and have a little bit more of an audience than just me staring at you. We're going to do next week. So if we can't, I have a huge class this time, so if I can't fit them all in next week, that's okay. But I'm going to actually post that assignment on Friday instead of on Monday, so that if anybody wants to work on it over the weekend and sign up for some of those slots earlier in the week, that would be great. Whenever I have a sign up for anything and I say, okay, you can sign up anytime between Monday and Friday, and I have like 30 different time slots open, everybody always tries to squish it into next Friday. It's just the way we are. So I would appreciate a couple of you just jumping up and doing it earlier in the week. That would help me out a lot. But that's what's coming up for next week. So if you guys have any questions about that or anything else, let me know. But otherwise, thanks for joining me, guys. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.